Welcome to Naval Air Station Moffett Field, 1992. This is the last Moffett Field Air Show. It's a time of sadness for many of us who've been coming to these air shows for years, but in a moment we're going to see what a wonderful show can be presented in the air here at Moffett. But before we see the air show, we must talk a little bit about the history of Moffett Field, one of the most important military activities in the San Francisco Bay Area, and a history that goes all the way back to the 1930s. The 1920s marked the golden age of the dirigible or airship. The first and most famous of them all was the Graf Zeppelin. Powered by 4 engines, it still holds the world's dirigible straight-line record of 3,830 miles non-stop. It was 770 feet long and 116 feet in diameter at its widest point. The Graf Zeppelin flew at a rate of 70 miles per hour. The dirigible was considered the ideal way of transportation at the time. In 1924, as part of World War I reparations, Germany delivered the Graf Zeppelin to the United States Navy, where it served for 15 years. Inspired by the unusual capabilities of the Graf Zeppelin, the U.S. Navy constructed 2 dirigibles, named the USS Akron and the USS Macon. The USS Macon was 785 feet long, encased well over 5 million feet of helium, and was powered by 8 560 horsepower engines. Speed was 95 miles per hour with a range of 6,000 miles. The primary functions of these 2 airships were to patrol, scout, spot, and identify ships. In addition, these dirigibles also carried 5 Sparrowhawk fighter planes in the hangar bay of the ship. These planes were used for scouting and defense against enemy aircraft. Each plane was hooked on by a specially designed trapeze. The trapeze allowed the Sparrowhawk to hook and unhook while the dirigible was in flight. The Macon's Sparrowhawk squadron also used this trapeze concept on their emblem. As word got out that a West Coast dirigible airbase was needed for the USS Macon, a majority of Bay Area cities campaigned and purchased 1,000 acres of farmland near Sunnyvale. It was in 1931 that a bill was approved by Congress and signed by President Herbert Hoover for obtaining the land. A check for $477,065.90 was drawn, and the title to the land was given to the U.S. Navy for the amount of $1. Groundbreaking began on October 5, 1931, and the home of the USS Macon, Hangar 1, was born. Constructed of steel and covered with galvanized steel, the hangar measured 1,138 feet long, 198 feet high, 308 feet wide, with a floor space of 8 acres. The doors of this monstrosity weighed some 600 tons each. An inaugural celebration for the opening of this airbase was being planned for April 12, 1933. This event would be overshadowed by tragedy. In the early hours of April 4, 1933, just 8 days before the commissioning, the sister ship Akron went down off the New Jersey coastline, killing 73 of her 76-man crew. One of the men aboard was Rear Admiral William A. Moffett, Chief of Aeronautics and Naval Aviation. Despite this occurrence, Naval Air Station Sunnyvale was christened at 11:30 a.m. on April the 12th, 1933. Some days later, the landing field was named Moffett Field in honor of the late Rear Admiral William A. Moffett. On February the 12th, 1935, the USS Macon crashed off the shores of Point Sur near Monterey. This loss marked the end of the dirigible. With the crash of the USS Macon, the U.S. Navy folded operations and transferred the base to the U.S. Army. The Army called it Moffett Field Army Air Corps Base. In 1942, with the outbreak of World War II, the U.S. Navy reinstated the air station from the Army, renaming it once again NAS Sunnyvale. A few days later, the Secretary of the Navy renamed it Naval Air Station Moffett Field. Later, hangars 2 and 3 were erected. Non-burning wood and concrete were used to construct these hangars, for there was a steel shortage because of the war. In the coming years, coastal patrol blimps, balloons, and air training ships were common sightings in the Santa Clara Valley. The mid-1940s signaled the arrival of the Naval Air Transport Service Squadron and the gradual decommissioning of the Light-of-the-Air facility. By the 1950s, NAS Moffett would soon be the West Coast's largest naval air transport base, the first all-weather naval air station, and the home base for aircraft carrier fighters guarding the Pacific. In 1962, NAS Moffett became the Navy's West Coast base for the P-3 Orion, the Navy's newest and fastest submarine hunter. For the next 30 years, NAS Moffett would establish itself as the Pacific Fleet headquarters for all P-3 aircraft. That was then. This is now. And now means that you are front and center, a ringside seat with 750,000 people who, through World Aviation, are getting to see Moffett 1992, the last air show.
Okay, I have him right now, right above us. And what you'll see, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see a smoke trail start from behind the aircraft. There it is right now. The smoke is on, and that means that we've struck up the smoke canisters on the boots of our jumpers. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to hand over the microphone to the U.S. Navy Leapfrogs team narrator, Mr. Tom Sharpie.
And we have jumpers away, falling at speeds of up to 120 miles an hour, coming face down to the earth. These jumpers will form together, make one large group, a large donut in here. Next jumper's on his way in, right on target. Last two jumpers are in final. See their hands moving up and down, and what they're doing is controlling these canopies. Give them airspeed and lift, just like you do with an aircraft. Come right down in front of you, flaring it out, and touchdown. Final jumper's on his way in. Give him a big hand, folks.
Okay, our top jumpers are... aircraft is now commencing.
The P-3 Orion is the mainstay of flight operations at Moffett Field these days, although in its history many other aircraft have seen service here, and you're going to see a flight demonstration in the P-3 Orion that will knock your socks off. But let's talk to the crew and see what they have to say about their airplane. First of all, Mike Spradlin. Mike, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sir. Hi, I'm Lieutenant Mike Spradlin. I'm the pilot at the controls in the left seat of the aircraft for the air show.
You've got a lot of time, a lot of experience, and you're an instructor in this airplane. Tell us what you really like about the P-3, because we're going to see it being put to its paces.
Okay, I think the overall characteristics and flight characteristics of the plane are pretty amazing. You'll see from the demonstration that the plane can do quite a bit and that it's very versatile. Throughout the demonstration today, we'll never exceed any of the NATOPS limitations on the aircraft. The lowest we'll go is during the takeoff run, we'll get to 100 feet during the level off, and then 200 feet, about 300 knots during the high-speed pass. We get up to 60 degrees angle of bank during some of the maneuvers.
Let's talk about the complete crew complement.
Normally we have 3 pilots on a full tactical crew and 2 flight engineers. After that we have a TACO, or a tactical coordinator, who's the senior NFO or naval flight officer on board, also an officer. The other NFO officer is a navigator communicator whose sole function is to talk on the radios, make sure that he keeps the aircraft in the position that we think it is over the ocean, because unlike flying over land, you don't have any visual reference. So he's the guy that keeps you in the ballpark. Then we have a Sensor 3, or a non-acoustic operator, that runs the electronic gear or electronic sensing equipment and the radar, as well as the radar. And then we have 2 acoustic operators who are totally in charge of maintaining sonobuoy contact and monitoring that contact and interpreting the data they get from that. And then we have an ordnanceman who drops the sonobuoys and is in charge of any ordnance that we carry. And then a in-flight technician who is in charge of fixing anything that breaks during the flight.
What do you consider the primary challenge, especially when you are pushing the envelope, as we will be seeing in the demonstration in a little while?
I think the hardest part for us during the air show and flying is to keep flight safety the paramount thing. We back up the pilots with altitude assignments, radio calls, outside air traffic, and on top of all that, we are required to keep track of all the systems, emergency procedures, environmental, hydraulics, etc. It can be a very challenging job for flight engineers. Well, the P-3 is a very overpowered aircraft. It produces approximately 18,000 shaft horsepower, and the variable pitch constant speed propeller allows the P-3 to operate at max power, max thrust, and when we land, to reverse the pitch of the prop and keep the same engine speed, and that allows the airplane to use all that shaft horsepower to back up the airplane, and with brakes assisted we can stop in like 1,000 foot of runway if the gross weight is light enough.
As you probably are all aware, there have been occasions in which P-3s have been lost, and the speculation has been overspeed propellers. What happens to the airplane, Ed, when you get an overspeed problem, and how do you control it?
Well, when we have an overspeed problem, the first thing we want to do is find out what is causing the overspeed, and the procedures are set as such that we can usually isolate pretty quick whether it's going to be a mechanical propeller problem or an electrical propeller problem. And usually if it's an electrical propeller problem, it's very simple. We just turn off the electrical portion of the propeller control, and that will hopefully take care of the problem. If it's a fluid control or a prop control type problem, then it gets a little bit more complicated. But we have a backup system that we can go ahead and we can kick this backup system in, initiate that, and it'll just pitch lock the prop. In other words, instead of being a variable pitch constant speed prop, will become a fixed pitch prop, much like you see on the little Cessnas flying around, and we can still get the aircraft home safely. Our procedures are designed to put the aircraft in the best configuration possible to get us back home.
You will today in the air show see an example of a feathered propeller as the P-3 comes by, illustrating one of the techniques that it uses to reduce fuel use and remain on station. And of course, we won't see any problems in the air today during the air show. We will, however, see 4 gentlemen of the United States Navy showing us what a marvelous airplane this is and what a great job they have done to bring it to us, the public. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
And if you look over to your right over there, you'll see Scott Varick in Smoke and Thunder.
let's talk to Scott Hamack. First of all, Scott, how do you come to be at the wheel of this remarkable vehicle? What is your background in the car business?
Well, I started racing when I was a teenager in 1956, so that kind of dates me a little bit. But anyhow, I've been around the racing field for quite many years, and was involved in aviation to the interest in it anyway, and wanted to combine the two together. So I decided I was going to put a jet engine in a dragster of this type, and proceeded to put this vehicle together roughly 14 years ago. The car itself is 26 foot long, and we built the chassis out of 4130 chromoly tubing from the ground up. The engine itself is out of a North American Buckeye, which was a Navy trainer, and they normally ran that aircraft without an afterburner, and they developed about 3,400 pounds of thrust. With this combination we have fitted it with an afterburner, developed 65 to 6,800 pounds of thrust, which gives me a 3-to-1 to power to weight ratio, and gives me the awesome acceleration. The car accelerates from a standing start at roughly 4 to 4.5 Gs, and will accelerate from 0 to 280 miles an hour in just under 6 seconds. So if I let the burner run for just a split second longer, I'm up in the 300-mile-an-hour range instantly. I've been running this car now for 13 years, and I'll tell you, the experience today operating it's no different than it was the first week I started running it. There's no doubt about it. Once you get in it and you fire this thing up, there's an awful lot of horsepower, and you're controlling the whole situation. So the performance definitely pumps your adrenaline up and really gets you ready for what you're going to do. When I actually race the airplanes, I let them come in at a speed roughly 180 to 200 miles per hour, and this is the advantage they have over me because I'm sitting at a standing start. So as they approach the vehicle, as soon as they get on my tail, I'll get a signal from my wife out there with a set of flags, and I'll light the afterburner and I'll chase the airplanes because they're going to pass me. But within a quarter of a mile, I will catch them and overtake them.
Lots of tickets. And ladies and gentlemen, from your left, there is the big super salmon of Mr. Eddie Andrini. Many years ago at the Cleveland Everest.
Eddie Andrini from Half Moon Bay is very well known to airshow goers all over the United States, and he has done something quite remarkable with an amazing airplane. But before we talk about the airplane and his show, let's talk about Eddie Andrini, the pilot. What is your background as a pilot, Eddie? When did you get started?
I started flying in high school in 1955. I was a junior in high school, and I just wanted to learn, so I went out, that's when I started.
And tell us about the equipment, where you started, what sort of airplanes you were flying, and roughly what has brought you to this remarkable creation today.
Well, it was just something that I just always wanted to do on my own, and I always had a side job and stuff, so I was able to buy myself an airplane in high school with another fellow, and it was an L-2, a little observation aircraft, World War II, the Taylorcraft, and we bought that, and we paid like $750, and I proceeding, and I got my license in the airplane. And then we sold it after that, and I moved on to other airplanes. This is not really a Sturman anymore. It's been, you know, very highly modified. And we started with the engine. We put a larger engine, double the horsepower, or actually more double. It's 225 originally, it's got about 500 now. It's an R985. And we put a cowling on it, and it's got an inverted fuel and oil system in it. It's got 4 ailerons on it, and then we changed the wheels, put smaller wheels on it for less drag. And we have root fairings on it, and we have spades on it like a little Pitts has. So this airplane kind of performs between a big airplane and a little airplane.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Red Knight down there on your right-hand side, the Lockheed T-33, the Canadair. Rick Rickett at the controls is running up the engine now, that Rolls-Royce Mean 10 engine. They'll be taking you off and showing you a beautiful display of precision flight in the Lockheed T-33.
A great air show favorite all around the United States, the Red Knight of Rick Brickett. Rick, how do you come to be standing here, a demonstration pilot at air shows? What is your background in flying?
Well, I'm the president and owner of Red Knight Air Shows, and we're a solo jet aerobatic demonstration. The Red Knight, you see behind us here, is a Silver Star Canadair T-33 that's modified into the Red Knight configuration. We have a very unique dual smoke system, which you saw in the slide of the show. And then we have the brightly colored paint scheme for visibility for the crowd. And we fly a full aerobatic routine designed to keep the routine at the airport, and so the entertainment value stays very high.
How did you come to pick this airplane, and where did it come from?
Well, a couple years ago, Dennis Sanders and I were looking at starting up an air show act, and we started going through jets and what would be suitable. And we said, well, we have to have 2 seats to be able to fly the press rides. So, okay, that knocked out, you know, Sabres and the single-place MiGs and things like that. We also wanted an airplane that was had self-starting capability. The straight wing of the T-Bird helps us so we can get in and out of some of the smaller shows, especially higher elevations. And so basically the T-Bird kind of picked us, you know. It was kind of, when we got down to the bottom of it, it was like, well, it'll be the T-33. And then also cost and availability was a factor. I mean, there's some airplanes that would be suitable that are, you know, modern day airplanes that are very expensive that wouldn't pencil out in the air show environment. As far as my routine, I have min and max speeds, min and max altitudes. I have crossing altitudes over the top of every maneuver. There's absolutely no freelancing going on. The only thing I will do is if I don't have a ceiling or a cloud's in the way or something happens, I'll drop a maneuver, but I won't add anything. There's no ad-libbing.
Tell us about flying the T-33. The basic question that everyone always asks is, what is it like out there? You've got a lot of other experience in current jets like the A-7 and the F-16. Tell us about the T-33 and its kind of handling characteristics and what you like about it.
Well, the T-Bird's a great airplane. It, like I say, it's not a all-hydraulic airplane. We only have hydraulic ailerons that are assisted by hydraulics, so the maintenance and maintainability is good. The airplane's got a lot of performance. Yesterday I was out flying with the 1811 on a photo shoot, flying around at 120 knots. Today in the air show, you'll see me with the vertical roll going 440 knots indicated. I try to keep the top end of the show down to about 400 knots, so I stay in very close with the show site. But the airplane's got a lot of performance. It's got ease of maintainability. And as far as flying, it's a very nicely balanced airplane. It's quiet, it's air conditioned, pressurized. You fly your air show, you fill it up with fuel, and then you get about 1,000-mile legs with it. So you can get from coast to coast and get back to your real job, you know, for Monday. It's a good aerobatic airplane. It's a very honest airplane. It's got only one minor negative handling characteristic, and if you know about it, you just stay off the rudders. It's yaw sensitive. And besides that, there are really no negative handling qualities to the airplane. So it makes for an ideal air show airplane.
Just shows that
knows its way down the taxiway. And I want to guarantee you, Alan Silver is not crouching in the front of that airplane.
And ladies and gentlemen, from you right now, as promised before, Mr. John Culver in the AT-6 Texan.
This airplane will start out live at the Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, Southern California. To say when. And ladies and gentlemen, from your
John Juss here at Moffett Field for the last Moffett Air Show, talking to John Culver, the SNJ exponent. John, you've done something quite remarkable with this aeroplane, but before we talk about the aeroplane, tell me about your own flying background.
Well, basically, I'm a corporate pilot for the Northrop Corporation. I fly the prop jet King Air 200s, 1900s for a living, generally 5 days a week. But on the weekends, in the summer months, I fly my own SNJ built by North American. It's sort of like the taxi cab driver on his day off going out for a drive on a Sunday afternoon. But actually, I really enjoy this. This is a complete different type of flying other than what I do during the week. During the week, of course, it's basic air transportation for the corporate executives for the corporation. But on the weekends, I can actually get out and express myself by flying my own aircraft with a little less restrictions and performing before a large number of people, bringing the people a example of World War II air power. I learned to fly actually before I learned to drive. I soloed about 5 different types of aircraft on my 16th birthday and achieved all my other ratings before I was age 20. At age 21, I got my airline transport pilot's rating, which is the youngest age you can get one. I went on and flew as a flight instructor, and again, a part-time corporate pilot going into full-time. And then I was interested in the aerobatic realm of flight, which extends my arms and legs and thoughts into something a little bit different. And so that's where I got into the competition and the air show routine. Other than the smaller, more exotic aerobatic aircraft, I wanted to get into something like the warbird movement, and I enjoy seeing large aircraft flying, and something like an AT-6 really fit the bill. Once this aircraft represented the backbone of our U.S. fighter pilots in both theaters, and I'd like to bring this to the public to watch and experience rather than having it sit in a museum quietly retired. Well, this aircraft was built by the North American Aircraft Company in 1944. We were fortunate enough to locate this aircraft with its complete logs. The aircraft was an advanced trainer during World War II. In Korea, it was actually designated as a primary trainer. The aircraft is equipped with a Pratt & Whitney 600 horsepower, 1340 cubic inch engine, which equates out to burning about 35 gallons an hour and about 50 during an aerobatic demonstration. This aircraft, the instructor sat in the back, the student up front, and it was used for a multitude of things, including aircraft qualifications prior to fighter entries for a lot of the cadets, bombers, camera action. This particular aircraft was an instrument trainer down in El Toro. Even today, there are several squadrons of these aircraft in active duty in the South African countries, still doing what the role of the A-10 does here in the United States, with that is being a close air support aircraft. They're equipped with small rockets and I believe 50 caliber machine guns. The top speed of the aircraft is 250 miles an hour, stall speed's way down to about 58 miles an hour, and it's a 6,000 pound aircraft at gross. The show that I perform with this aircraft is, everything I do is taught to the combat pilots during World War II. The exception being is that I bring it down on the deck, close and in tight to the crowd line, so they can see in great detail the loops, the barrel rolls, the split S's, Cuban 8s, the hammerhead quick turnarounds, and strafing runs. This airplane is very much a joy to fly. It's very light on the controls. It doesn't seem like it by looking at the aircraft, but it is very responsive. As a matter of fact, when you're flying in the environment that I fly down low, you got to be very careful not to over-control it and high-speed stall it. So that's why we have to be very careful with it, but otherwise she flies like a dream, an absolute dream.
Fenstermacher, it looks like they're going to go off just a little bit ahead of schedule. And welcome to Moffett 1992. Edna Mae Fenstermacher from the East Alviso, Pink Flamingo, Ron and Downing Club.
Way out there with Ralph Brunel. Give her a round of applause as she goes out. Tremendous effort. I don't know that hat is going to stay, Edna Mae. Yes, and the high heels are giving a bit of a problem there too, I see. That airplane is getting ready to come to Bud Dolman is officially retired from the airship business, and he has... Oh, Ralph is not getting fresh there, Edna Mae. Those lower straps there are required, and I wouldn't bash him too hard with your bus there, because one thing you don't want in an aerobatic aircraft is a dazed pilot. My goodness me. I think a skirt probably wasn't a good idea for the flight. That's my goodness. Climbing the hole right there. Yes. You've heard of TGIF in the May. This one is FGIF. Feet go in first. Ah, wiggle her way down there. Jenny Craig strikes again. Okay, now you need to put both of those straps over your shoulders. And that first speed wing, incidentally, as I mentioned before, flown by Joe Jacobson, flew the speed wing at the Cleveland National Air Races in the 1930s. This is a historic aircraft. For those of you that are looking up close, look at how thin the wing is on the Curtis Speed wing to allow it to glide better. I know I've heard that said many, many times over and over that the biplane has got more weight, so therefore it glides better. Actually, it was true.
Vern, we hear the F word in flying a lot, and that word is fun, and you have a show that is mostly fun. Tell us about the genesis of it, where it came from, and what you're doing.
Well, I've been on the professional airshow circuit for 15 years, and flying acrobatics is a great deal of fun. But some years ago, we decided to put a little comedy routine in to lighten up the air show. Even Shakespeare's tragedies, as you know, have a little comedy relief in them. And so we thought up old Edna Mae Fenstermacher, the poor old lady who's never been in an airplane before, and let's give her her first airplane ride. And then we hide a parachute jumper in the front cockpit. Nobody knows he's there, so that even the more sophisticated people that know that Edna Mae's not for real get very suspicious when two people get in the airplane and two people get out and there's nobody left in the airplane.
Wait a minute. Ralph, your airplane is getting away what's going on here? Oh, look at that. That beautiful touchdown. From a mile high, right to the spot. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan Silver from Hayward, California. I would say Alan was so away. 1932 Curtis Speedway.
Airplanes are like beautiful women. I love them all. This is a 1932 Curtiss-Wright B-14B Speedwing, and it was built as a sports racing plane. The fellow that would buy this airplane in 1932 owned the then equivalent of a F-16 fighter plane. He had the fastest civilian airplane in the world, as fast as the modern fighters of its day. And it's a sweet, beautiful old airplane that was built for sports racing. It's a little bit today like owning a Ferrari. You've got real high performance. This airplane, even though it was built in 32, will today give a modern Bonanza a race for its money.
Palo San Jose and Real View Airports. There's Rich saying hello to the
1930s style wing walking. Mr. Eddie Andrini and Mr. Alan Silver. And I might mention, ladies and gentlemen, I've told you before that this is Alan Silver's last air show here as a wing walker.
The other half of the Eddie Andrini Air Show is the brave man who rides the wing, and that man is Alan Silver. Alan, people question your sanity in doing what you're doing up there, but you do it wonderfully. How did you get involved in the wing walking business?
It was not a whim exactly, but I'd been doing a wing walking routine off of Jim Nisson's 1918 Jenny with a modified version where I wore a parachute. And of course, I had met Eddie many, many years ago at air shows, and we'd often teamed up together where I'd do a parachute jump out of this wonderful Stearman. And one day between seasons, we just said, you know, I'd like to enhance my parachute routine, and Eddie said, I'd like to enhance my flying, and so we came up with the wing walking, and I said, I'd always wanted to do that, a real wing walking routine. And so we went out and practiced one day in Half Moon Bay where Eddie's located. In fact, two other Stearmans went up with us because they were assuming I was going to fall off the first day. We went out over the ocean. I climbed out onto the wing of the aircraft, looked back at Eddie, and I said, looks like I'm ready. Gave him the thumbs up. We did a roll. I was still there. And we did a loop, and I was still there. And I said, hey, this is great.
forces that you're encountering? What is the principal struggle for you technically?
Well, the biggest struggle is, I can relate it, I think people can relate this to the recent hurricanes in Florida, where they call a force 4 hurricane. We're talking of 150 to 60 mile per hour winds, particularly when, you know, something in the diving maneuver just before we pull up. And then at that point, we're pulling 4 to 5 Gs, you know, 4 or 5 times your body weight. That in itself is quite a bit on your body. But probably the most critical time is when I transition from the lower wing to the upper area where we have the rack located. When I'm next to the fuselage, the prop wash is a big factor in getting my timing right to swing into the aircraft and the grips right to climb up to the top of the aircraft. That's what I consider the most critical time of the whole performance.
Alan, this, to our great regret, is going to be your last air show. Moffett 92, the last air show of Moffett, and the last wing walking of Alan Silver. What is causing you to set aside your parachute at this time?
Well, I just figured if Moffitt's going to be closing and no more air shows, I'm going to quit my wing walking routine. But I had committed myself to about three and a half years of this, and one for money for myself and my wife. But I just discovered this is extremely hard on your body doing this, and I've got gray hairs. It's not from fright up there on the top of the airplane. I'm 48. I should have started this 20 years ago. I'm finding the black and blue marks don't go away in a couple days of the young kids anymore,
And I do have a little bit of a back problem, and it's been really bothering me a lot this year. I'm not leaving the air show circuit. I still have my parachute team, the Spirit of America, and I'll be still doing routines out of aircraft like Vern Dahlman's and doing the Edna May routine. So, and occasionally, I don't know, you might twist my arm, and Eddie might find me on the top of a plane someplace along the line, but you know, there's not too many of us that walk the wings and everything, so it's been a close fraternity, and it's been a wonderful experience. It's been a interesting growing experience. You know, the air show people, we're a very tight family. Flyers, all of us that are around the aircraft. And our main job is, when you look out, 400,000 people, our main job, as Sean Tucker said, is to entertain the people, and that's what we're here to do, and put on a good family entertainment.
And as you can see from the show that Alan and Eddie are doing together, it is a wonderful show. It is marvelous entertainment. We're delighted that Alan has been able to give so much of himself. And Alan, you will be very seriously missed.
John, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that airplane that you saw blast into the air is the MiG-17F of Mr. Bill Reisman.
Bill Reisman is here at Moffett 1992, the last Moffett Air Show, with a very unusual airplane, his MiG. But before we talk about the MiG, Bill, tell us about your background as a pilot. How did you get started?
Well, I learned to fly the summer I was 13. I soloed when I was 16, and I got my license when I was 17. And then I spent 20 years as a fighter pilot in the Air Force, a couple of years as an airline pilot. It's something that's very deep within me. I've never been totally smitten by an airplane. As soon as I saw it roar by with that beautiful 20 feet of orange flame coming out the afterburner, I knew I had to have this aircraft. I think what's really unusual is that I spent 20 years in a blue uniform studying intelligence reports on how to fight this aircraft, and now I own it and fly it. Is the world changing or what? The aircraft is a dream to fly. It's a very honest aircraft. The MiG-15 has some very bad flying characteristics. They designed those characteristics out of the MiG-17 when what they really did to create the MiG-17 was redesign a MiG-15. They changed the angle of the wing sweep from 35 to 45. They added a third wing fence instead of two. They thinned out the wings, rounded the wing tips, and they extended the fuselage so that they could add the afterburner engine. And all of those characteristics changed the flying handling capabilities of the aircraft dramatically. It's a very honest aircraft.
Now again from the left, Bill Reisman.
Excited. I wanted to provoke emotion in people, and you know, I do a full aerobatic routine in this thing, straight up, straight down as much as I can. The ground rush on the way down is quite exciting in the aircraft, but it's amazing to me the pass that the people seem to get off on the most is a really simple curvilinear pass. I had the aircraft doing about 550 knots, the big orange flame coming out the afterburner, and I bring it into 500 feet from the seem to enjoy that much more than anything else I do.
about to see a tactical demonstration by one of the most devastating aerial weapons that the United States fighting forces employ, and that is the FA-18 Hornet. The F-18 Hornet we're seeing today is from VFA 125 at Lemoore Naval Air Station in Lemoore, California, and this is a frontline fighter attack machine. This is not a demonstration aircraft. What you're seeing is an actual tactical demonstration of the capabilities of this aircraft.
This is the last Moffat Air Show, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And I'm not going to be able to do them all day, of course, but Maggie Gunnison, Maggie Gunnison, who was born October 18, 1922, is 70 today. Happy birthday to you, Maggie.
ladies and gentlemen, we go from the finest that the military have to offer to the finest that the civilian world has to offer. And that is the 1991 and 1992 United States aerobatic champion, Miss Patty Wagstaff.
I come from an aviation family, and flying just really came naturally to me. And as soon as I started flying, all I really wanted to do was aerobatics. So I've been doing aerobatics since about 1983. I got my license in 1980, and I've been going for it and doing it full time ever since. I started in decathlon. Then I went to a Pitts S1S, and other Pitts, and other Pitts. I went to an Extra 230, and now I fly an Extra 260. I first heard of this airplane in 1987 when Walter Extra built it for himself, and it's a combination of both wood and composite construction. It's a fabulous airplane. It was the first six-cylinder monoplane that Walter built, and when I saw it, I thought, this is the plane that I want. Finally, Walter sold it. He wasn't interested in selling it for a couple of years, and sold it to Pompano Air Center in Florida, and I bought it through them and made some small modifications, and I've been flying it for 2 seasons now. It has a climb rate of about 4,000 feet a minute, a roll rate of 360 degrees a second. It has 315 horsepower and only weighs 1,100 pounds, and I tell everybody that's about what a Harley weighs. Well, it has a lot more vertical penetration, and that's especially important for competition aerobatics, which I'm heavily involved in. It can do a lot more on the line because it rolls so much faster, and I think it's a lot more exciting plane to watch than the four-cylinder monoplane. I think that people really enjoy my 8-sided loop with half rolls on each side. I think I'm the only performer doing it, and what I do is an 8-sided loop, and on each side I put a half a roll, so I'm constantly going from positive to negative G's. So it's fairly physically taxing, it's complex, and it's fun for the spectators because they can count through it. I keep working on improving and perfecting my routine, and I think I add something and change something a little bit every time I fly, so there's always some surprises, even for me. Well, I probably have taken it to the extreme, and most of the airshow pilots have. We're on the road 6 or 7 months a year. We fly expensive maintenance hog type airplanes. You know, there's always something that you have to be fixing on these planes, and it's really sort of a gypsy lifestyle. I'm a 4-time member of the U.S. aerobatic team. I've competed in England, France, Switzerland, and Canada, and I'm a 2-time national champion, 1991 and 2, and I've been the top-ranked woman aerobatic pilot in the U.S. since 1987. So I've gone at it pretty full-time.
you there. We've got Miss Patty Wagstaff in the parade car. She's hiding down there. Come on, get up out of there, Patty. Sit up and what an incredible performance. Ladies and gentlemen, the 1991 and 1992 United States aerobatic champion and a wonderful bust to boot from Anchorage, Alaska and Tucson, Arizona, depending on what time of the year it is, Miss Patty Wagstaff.
As we promised earlier on, ladies and gentlemen, we do have, for your excitement and viewing pleasure today, the Stealth F-117 fighter.
The incredible F-117A stealth fighter. Manufactured by the Lockheed Advanced Development Project.
Here he goes over the center ribbon. And then under ribbon number 3.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you'll direct your attention high above you right now, you are watching the aerobatic biplane, the Randolph Challenger of Mr. Sean D. Tucker.
We're here with Sean Tucker at the last Moffett Air Show. Sean Tucker, you have an air show that speaks for itself, but before we let it speak for itself, let's talk about your background as a pilot. How did you get started in this crazy racket?
Probably the best racket I've ever been in my life, and I think it is certainly a little bit crazy because it's such a hard job to do it correctly, and I practice every day. Been flying for 20 years. I probably have a little over 13,000 hours of flying time total, and a little over 3,000 hours in little aerobatic biplanes, and I'm still learning.
Tell us about your airplane. It looks like a Pitts, but it's much more.
It certainly is. We call her now the Randolph Challenger for my national sponsor, Randolph Sunglasses. But what we've done is changed it here and there. My partner, Tom Dygert, who's an engineer with Lockheed, is the one who came up with a lot of the designs of the airplane. We have 320 horsepower instead of 260. Our wings have been changed to get a little more roll rate. Tail's been changed, and we wanted its own unique look.
And now you do a show which includes a lot of maneuvers that certainly I, as a pilot, and many other pilots in the audience think shouldn't be done. You turn flying into an unnatural act. What exactly are you trying to prove with this? It's a marvelous proof, but I'd like to know what your philosophy is in the show.
Well, I think every performer who flies, it personifies who they are with their spirit. And that's Sean D. Tucker out there, and I give 110%. Today, we'll have 500,000 people here, and today, with these 500,000 people, I'll have them in the palm of my hand. And they know when I'm done flying that this gentleman gave 110%. And I'm very humbled by the opportunity and very proud of the fact that I can fly like that.
In particular, you do a number of maneuvers that make relatively sophisticated pilots quite uncomfortable. Your Harrier bus, for example, airplanes don't fly like that.
Mine does, and Sean D. Tucker does, and that's because I work very hard at my art, and although it's transitory, I consider it art. Anytime you can provoke emotion in people, you're creating an impression, and you've succeeded in the opportunity to do something like that, and it's very important to me.
How do you get the aeroplane to do the Harrier pass at 38 miles an hour, flying in a way that nobody ever thought an aeroplane could fly?
Does the magician tell you how it does their tricks? No, we'll let you go ahead and try to guess.
And ladies and gentlemen, at this point, if you look directly out in front of you, slightly smaller than the Lockheed hangar over there, and not quite as green, is our Norseman from Minnesota. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, you see the Red Baron Pizza Squadron out on the end there.
The Red Baron Pizza Stearmen are here at the last air show, Moffett 1992, showing us what a wonderful, great old biplane this was and still is. But first of all, in talking to Steve Thompson, Steve, we'd like to know about where you find the pilots who are doing this interesting and unusual flying job.
Well, we find them from all walks of flying. I was a flight instructor and ran a flight school and a charter operation. John was a flight instructor. Sonny was a crop sprayer. Randy was a competition pilot. Matt is a competition pilot. As a matter of fact, he won a national championship last year in the sportsman category. The Stearman itself is a very rugged airplane and quite suitable for air shows, but it's a little lacks a little power. So we, instead of the 220 horse Continental they came out with, we put a 450 horse Pratt & Whitney on there. We had to put inverted fuel and oil systems, which it didn't have before, and larger wheels and brakes, better brakes. And we also added ailerons in the upper wing up there, and we put servo tabs on the ailerons to lighten up the control forces somewhat. We get a much better roll rate, and it's quite a bit nicer airplane to roll than a stock Stearman. It just doesn't take quite as much muscle.
One of the things that intrigues everybody who comes to an air show is, how do you design the air show? What do you decide what maneuvers you're going to do?
Well, we start out with 1 or 2 or 3 maneuvers and think, we'd like to do this. Then you've got to try and design other maneuvers around to put them in the proper position. It's really a matter of evolution. You start out with a basic concept, and then you change it each year to make it a little better, a little tighter, a little closer. It's mostly evolution. In our type of show, actually the part that looks the toughest, which is the close-in formation stuff, is not the most difficult for us. The most difficult thing for us is when we separate, to try and keep the spacing even. The timing is so critical in that part of it. Flying close is, well, we fly close about 5 hours a day every single day of the year, with the exception of December and January. It's almost routine for us, so that may look the most hazardous, but the most difficult is the timing involved to get the spacing properly when we're not in close. There are some really neat little aerobatic airplanes. You saw a couple here, Sean Tucker's and Patty Wagstaff's. They are delightful aircraft with tremendous roll rates and tremendous responsiveness. Some years ago, I compared flying close-in formation with a big, ungainly airplane like this, kind of like performing brain surgery with a hatchet. probably going to go
He's going to be coming out that side, yeah.
the side over here.
Coach Walsh, what brings you to an air show? I didn't realize you had this interest.
Well, I'm a big airplane buff, and I've always wanted to fly a P-51, and it was just marvelous, just wonderful.
That was the question. How was it? Tell us about the experience in a bit more detail.
Well, it's a very smooth airplane. It's just beautiful, beautiful airplane. It was just marvelous. There were two of us, so we got pretty close together, and to see the F-51 in flight is just wonderful.
So it was worthwhile coming to the air show. Have you had the chance to see some of these other airplanes here as well?
Oh, certainly. I've seen virtually all of them, and of course this is my favorite, my sentimental favorite.
Have you a specific flying experience of your own?
No, I've flown with jets and things like that, but this is the best.
We're delighted that you're here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I hope that wasn't too much.
John, it's really hard.
We're here with Bob Gilliford and his beautiful Sacco Golib. Good evening, Bob.
Hello, Robert. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, listen, I don't know too much about the Golib. Maybe you can start by telling us where it's made and go from there.
The Sacco Golib here, which you see behind me, is an indigenous product of the Yugoslav aircraft industry. It was made in the Bosnian city of Mostar, which is an old Muslim town on the Neretva River, which is now probably, unfortunately, largely rubble. I don't know, but this airplane was developed in the early 60s by the Yugoslav aeronautical industry and was designed and built there. It incorporates a lot of Western components, notably the engine, which is a Rolls-Royce Viper, an engine that is in wide use in many military trainers, and actually was the engine which was used in the early Hawker business jets. So unique among foreign airplanes, foreign military jets, this has a certificated engine actually in the U.S. The prototype first flew in 1961, and I think the production went into the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. This particular airplane was made in 1967. It was in an operating squadron. It was overhauled, engine and airframe, in 1986, continued to be operated by a training squadron, and it was sold to a dealer in the United States in 1988. It left the operating squadron in about July, was disassembled, shipped over here, and flying again in the beginning of the year 1989. And it's relatively unsophisticated in terms of its systems. For example, it's not pressurized or air conditioned, which is actually good because it's one less system and a little less power taken from the engine. All the controls are manual. The starting of the airplane is extremely straightforward. Hit the button for 2 seconds and everything else is automatic. I've been involved for many years with propeller fighters, and I owned a couple Mustangs and a Corsair and a Sea Fury, and it was initially a little bit of a change to get into something that is not shaking you to death and that doesn't drip all over you when you get under it. But it's been a very happy transition once you get used to the difference in operating characteristics and aerodynamics of the engine and the fact that you don't have a prop blowing air across your control surfaces. It was a fairly easy transition, and now I'm very happy to be flying it. It's very quiet and smooth, and in many respects, or actually in most respects, it's a lot simpler to operate than a prop fighter, as long as everything is going well. There's very little to do. It's just essentially a go lever and a gear and flaps and a stick, and so it's a very nice airplane to fly from that standpoint. The airplane is designed primarily as an advanced trainer and a light attack fighter. It carries, as you can see, 250 caliber machine guns in the nose. It's equipped with hard points so it can carry bombs and rockets, and it was used in that role primarily for armament training, but of course, things being what they are, it's now being used for combat, I'm sorry to say. Here's one we've rescued, and it's not hurting anybody now, and I hope it won't.
From your right, ladies and gentlemen, is the Yak Attack, and here to tell you all about it is Mr. Wayne Moreland.
Spasiba, Gordon. Tolarici Dieti. That's ladies and gentlemen and girls and boys. Boyd's, the makers of quality gourmet coffee, are proud to present Bill Reisman and the entire Yak Attack team.
Yak Attack is a collection of 3 strange airplanes flown by 3 weird pilots, and that's our other airshow act. We are a little different. We took a 1946 Beechcraft D-18S and paired it up with the only 2 Russian Yak-50 aerobatic aircraft in the country, painted them all a startling black color with red noses, and it's a very popular act, and we do aerobatics around the Beechcraft with the Yak-50s. Wonderful aircraft. This was designed by Sergei Yakovlev, who is the son of Alexander Yakovlev, who designed most of the famous Russian fighters of World War II. The aircraft looks and sounds much like a World War II fighter, but it's actually a contemporary aircraft. He designed it in '75 specifically with the goal of winning the World Championship in aerobatics, which they did in '76 and again in '82. Basically, the aircraft is designed to go straight up, twist your intestines around your neck, come straight back down and land. It was the premier aerobatic aircraft in the late '70s, early '80s. Since then, it's been replaced by the Sukhoi 26.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of you guys better do something and do it mighty quick. What's the noise? That's working for you. Look out.
Okay, how are you? Good to see you again.
It dawned on me at the beginning of today's show that you have just seen the last civilian aircraft act to be performed at the air show at Moffett. And it also occurred to me that maybe it's proper that the last civil air show act be conducted in 2 airplanes that came from the old Soviet Union, because it is, after all, the demise of the old Soviet Union and the change in the world that we have today that has caused actually the closing, or the soon-to-be closing, of this magnificent facility.
So, ladies and gentlemen, right now, on the last day of Moffett in 1992, it is my distinct pleasure and privilege to hand over show control at this time, ladies and gentlemen, to Blue Angel number 7, Lieutenant Commander Dave Stewart of the United States Navy, Blue Angels.
The Blue Angel maintenance crew and their equipment travel aboard United States Marine Corps C-130 Hercules transport, affectionately known as Fat Albert. It is the large blue and white aircraft taking its position on the runway to our right. Very shortly, Fat Albert will be demonstrating the jet-assisted takeoff capability of the C-130, commonly referred to as JATO. 8 solid fuel rockets full-mounted at each side of the aircraft provide 8,000 pounds of thrust for takeoffs from short, unimproved runways. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Your United States Navy Flight Demonstration Squadron takes pleasure in performing for you this our 69th flight demonstration of the 1992 season. This is Lieutenant Commander Dave Stewart, narrator for the Blue Angels. Since 1946, the Blue Angels have had the rare privilege of demonstrating to the American public the precision techniques of naval aviation, hoping to inspire our young men and women to pursue careers in the United States Navy and Marine Corps.
Blue Angel number 6, our opposing solo and our Marine Corps representative from Bozeman, Montana, Captain Ken.
My name's Captain Greg Wooldridge. I'm the flight leader of the Blue Angels, and I get to lead the team around the skies and across the country whenever we go anywhere. Get to be the flight lead as well as the commanding officer, so it's a real enviable position, a lot of fun. The F-18 is just an outstanding airplane. It's an outstanding air show airplane, but most importantly, and really the real importance of the airplane is that it's a tremendous combat aircraft. It does both the fighter and attack mission. Off the aircraft carrier, when I had a squadron on the USS Midway, which I'm very proud of, we flew off the decks. If we went on a bombing mission, we went off with bombs, but we also had air-to-air missiles that we always carried with us, so that we were always ready to do both roles. And in that way, if we're going to a target to attack it, we can also fight against those enemy fighters that might come up and try to keep us from getting to the target. So we have our own self-escort. And it's just a great airplane, great turning capability. The flight controls are superb, and it's got a lot of thrust to weight. It's just a dynamite airplane. The different positions on the team, of course, I'm number 1, the flight leader. The 2 wingmen are, on my right wing is number 2, on my left wing is number 3. The slot pilot is number 4. We work as a diamond, the 4 of us, for about the first 2/3 of the show. So there are 4 of us flying around as an element. The slot pilot he directs the formation, the way it's placed, the positioning within the formation, because he can see both those guys, and he's a guy with a year's worth of experience under his wings. So he's our slot pilot, and he does a heck of a lot for us. The 2 solos are number 5 and 6. They work an independent program. They have the flight line when we don't, and that usually happens again for about the first 2/3 of the show. Then we all join up as 6 planes for the final about third of the show, for about 5 or 6 maneuvers, where we fly what we call a delta with all 6 of us. The solos, they're the guys that do a lot of opposing maneuvers, a lot of head-on to each other type maneuvers, and they have a lot of fun out there. How do you get to be a Blue Angel? Well, that's a good question. The first thing you have to do, and I always stress this, is get a good education. Get your college diploma, your high school diploma, then your college degree. And once you have a college degree, then you can join naval aviation, either as a Navy guy or a Marine guy or gal. It's open to both men and women, and you work real hard at that. You earn your wings of gold, and then you go on and get some experience in the fleet. And it takes about 1,500 hours of tactical jet time to qualify for the team. So that takes probably 4 or 5 years of flying. And once you've gotten that prerequisite 1,500 hours of tactical jet time, then you can apply for the team. We take men and women. We haven't taken a woman pilot yet, but it's in the works. As soon as they get cleared for combat duty, then women will become eligible for the team. We like to have that as a prerequisite, the combat related duty. So, and that's going to come very soon, and I predict we'll have a woman on the team within probably 3 or 4 years, because there's a lot of outstanding women aviators out there in the Navy. To be the flight leader, the squadron commanding officer, you have to have commanded a squadron in the past. And I applied for the team just like anybody else does, although there were probably 15 or 20 of us that were commanding squadrons, regular combat type squadrons, that applied for the team at the same time. And the flight leader, his prerequisites are 3,000 hours of tactical jet time. So, and all of us had that, and I had that as well. So I was lucky enough to get picked, and I tell you, it's the greatest job in the world.
been my privilege and my pleasure to be working with you over the last couple of days. My name, once again, is Gordon Bowman Jones. I'm from right here in the Bay Area. I've been proud to bring this show to you here.
Representing the United States Navy and Marine Corps, the Blue Angels, 1992.
Now you know why Moffett Field and the air show here has over the years been one of the best attended air shows in the United States of America. It's quiet now. The last aerobatic routine has been flown. The last impressive thunder of military jets has gone by. The last P-3 has performed its last marvelous maneuver for the 750,000 people who came. They're all gone now. They're leaving us with the memories of Moffett 1992, the last air show. On behalf of World Aviation, I'm John Joss.